Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This weekend we are back wrenching on the 6.4 Powerstroke. Now, last weekend we got the transmission dropped and we got the old exhaust manifolds and up pipes dropped too. These came out super easy and I'm so grateful they did. Upon further inspection of these factory exhaust manifolds, they are warped because we had a broken bolt and a missing bolt on the back side of these, and they were driven on for quite some time with that incorrect setup. So these are super warped. The local machine shop wanted 160 each manifold to get resurfaced. So I found some cheaper new ones on eBay. These were $220 for the pair, so super cheap. I was originally gonna go with the Dorman brand ones, which I've heard some mixed reviews about. Dormans were $125 a piece on Amazon, but they only had one in stock. So I ordered these because I knew I'd get them this weekend, and because they were super cheap and affordable. And as you can see, they previously had some markings on them. They still say they're made in China, but whatever was ground off here, I have a strong feeling it was the Dorman part number and the Dorman branding on there. So we probably just got the same as Dorman's for a little bit cheaper and actually got them in time. Ordered some exhaust manifold bolts, but I only ordered enough for one side. Other than that, I sourced the best looking bolts that I had from the exhaust manifold pole. So we're gonna clean these up really good, make sure there's no crud in them, and then we're ready to install these bad boys. That's the first thing we gotta get done this weekend. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Let's keep diving into it. Alrighty, driver's side was super easy. The torque spec was weak. It wanted 18 foot-pounds, 2 passes. It didn't feel tight at all. I'm a little, I don't know, I feel a little weird about it, but maybe that's why the bolts came off so easy, is because they were properly torqued to spec. Now I'm gonna clean up all the used hardware, make sure I find the good ones, and then we'll knock out the passenger side. Alright guys, so when I started to sort through the old exhaust hardware bolts and started looking at them, along with these like standoffs, started looking at the threads like up close, they are super flat compared to this like new bolt here. You see how the threads have so much more depth, and these just are super flat and dull. So these are really worn out. I just don't want to reuse them. This is a job that I don't want to do again. So I decided to look for some more bolts, and I found this Dorman exhaust hardware kit online. It said it wouldn't fit, but it's the same thread size and the length, let's see, and the length is really close. This is a little bit longer here, this little knob, but I can cut that off without damaging the threads. I might have to cut that off, but we'll see. And I got the standoff studs. They're smaller threads on the standoffs, so I had to buy some smaller hardware for that. But this whole kit was like 50 bucks, and then this hardware was like 15 or 12 or something like that. 70 bucks versus like I would have spent 100 and something at the Ford dealership, but the Ford dealership was already closed today, so now we can make more progress on this. All right, so change of plans. This kit is incomplete. It was supposed to come with 4 of these standoff studs, and there's only 3 in here. I was losing my damn mind thinking I lost one. Was walking around the shop forever. I had to look back at the footage of when I was like showing you guys everything, and it's just not there. And then we'll just buy the Ford hardware tomorrow and just forget about it and be done and over with. So once we get back from AutoZone, we're gonna crawl back behind this engine. We're gonna drop the pressure plate and pull the rear main seal. Let's do it. Okay, well, with the way this is laid out and the way this is looking, I'm starting to think the rear main is not leaking. I already wiped this part down just to see if there was things coming out of that. So obviously it looks really like the rear main's not leaking, but I don't know. I'm going to clean up this entire area and try and see where the leak's coming from, because it leaks pretty good. And this rear main, even though I wiped it down, looks pretty damn dry. So I don't think it's leaking from that, which makes me concerned that I still have a bed plate leak. I know I have one. It's a very slight one, I thought, but now I'm thinking that it's actually a pretty heavy one and it's dripping into here, making it look like a rear main leak. And a bed plate is really bad news. You gotta pull the motor to deal with a bed plate leak. Yeah, I'm gonna wipe this down and then we can kind of like inspect and see where it's coming from. Because again, if the rear main's not leaking, I'm not gonna touch it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So That's what I've learned with rear mains. I just gotta figure out where the rest of this leak's coming from. So let's clean off this surface. See what happens, I guess. All right, we got this cleaned up, and with the way it wiped, I'm pretty convinced that we don't need a rear main. So I'm gonna get that in return process, and the rear main install tool I bought, I'm gonna get that into a return process too. I'm hoping it's not a bed plate. It looks like most of the leak actually is coming from somewhere on this side, just with the way the drips are. So it's something over in this area. I'm not exactly sure what. So I'll probably do some little more wipe down on it. Honestly, I'm probably just gonna leave it as it is. It's a diesel with 253,000 miles on it. Much like my Powerstroke, you know, diesels just leak oil, I guess. That's just part of it. I'm just accepting it, basically. But one thing we do got to do is we got to get these transmission cooler lines out and get the new set back in. All right, we got the old line set out here. I ended up cutting it up front, basically these last two bends right here. So I ended up cutting it right here, and I cut the hoses off because these are a quick disconnect to this here. So here's the quick disconnect fittings, and then this goes to the radiator. Kind of stupid. I'm assuming they use the quick disconnect to lift the cab up, but like you could just disconnect it there and pop it off, and same, you know. I got to get those fittings off and then hook these other hoses to this, but that'll be after we get this installed. Found the leak right here. Big old wear spot, big old crack. So it was worth replacing. The tie down that this thing sat on the cross member wasn't there, so I need to locate that. So we'll give this a shot. I'm going to try and set up the camera in a spot where you can see what the hell I'm doing, but glad I didn't have to lift the motor, because if I had to lift the motor, the scope creep would have been bad. I was already thinking about it. I was like, man, if I gotta lift the motor, maybe I'll just pull the motor, because then if I pull the motor, I can push the chassis out and pressure wash everything and then do all the shit I gotta do on the bench. Maybe I'll just get the bed plate gasket done, you know? Maybe I'll just take this whole engine to a 6.4 mechanic that's around here and just tell him to do the front cover and do the bed plate gasket. And that's still really tempting. But that's just more money to spend, and I'm spending too much money on this truck. Like way too much money on this truck. So I don't think that's what I'm gonna do. I think we're gonna put this trans line in, we're gonna accept the fact that it leaks oil, and then don't do anything too rational. As you can see, I did not have a good time with these trans lines. They fought me quite a bit. I thought I was getting caught up on the motor mount, which made me think I had to lift the motor. So I called it a night.
Tomorrow.
Alrighty guys, we are back. We're more in the afternoon time on this fine Saturday. I had to talk myself off the ledge because I was like this close to pulling this motor and doing the bed plate gasket. I was so close. The only thing that stopped me was Ford didn't really design the motor to be picked up, and there's not a good way to pick up this motor. I saw a few forums, but I'm just not doing it. I started looking more into the bed plate gasket. I don't know, there's just a lot of people saying that it's not a concerning leak. It's not a motor threatening leak, basically. Basically, it's the nature of it. They leak. A lot of people were saying if you do the bed plate gasket, don't be surprised if it leaks again. So I was just like, you know what? Whatever. But I'm not doing it. I was so close. Because you got to take the front cover off and the rear cover off to get the bed plate. And I was like, I got to replace the front cover. You know, and the motor's up. It's all disconnected. The only thing that's holding this motor in is motor mounts and, like, fuel lines. Like, I am, you know, this close to being able to pull the motor already. So, you know, what's a little bit more? I'm glad I stopped, though. I don't have an engine stand to hold this thing. I was going to take it to a guy that had one, and he said he was kind of down to help me out. So I was like, ooh, you know, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're gonna put this exhaust manifold in, we're gonna put the up pipes in, put the flywheel back on, and get the new trans in. All right, now that you're all caught up on the chaos, let's talk about the exhaust manifold. So I went into the Ford dealership bright and early this morning to buy exhaust manifold bolts, and their parts department was closed today. Guess to do an inventory restock or something. Pretty dumb. So while I was in that area, I went to a different AutoZone and bought the same exhaust manifold bolts that I got last night. This time with 4 of the proper standoff bolts. So last night I realized these are too long, so we got to cut off all these little nipples. Let's get this done so we can get that exhaust manifold in. that passenger side manifold in. Super happy with that. It looks super good. I was about to go in the back and start putting things together, and then I remembered what we were dealing with last night and what started down the let's just pull the damn motor rabbit hole, and that is the transmission cooler lines. So now I gotta battle those demons. All right guys, here's a little update. I was trying to prep the motor mount to be able to get lifted up, and during that, I ended up taking the AC compressor and all the pulley assemblies out because I gotta do it to get to the front cover anyways. And then I realized the transmission cooler lines don't mount on the cross member, they mount on the engine, which makes sense because it's part of the flex unit. So if you look down here, now that we have all this access room, we should have pulled that a long time ago. You can see right here, that little stud right there, that's where the bracket would go. And there's an old bracket on here. So someone like yanked the cooler lines out, disconnected them, and didn't put the bracket back. So that's why it wore a hole in it. Or that bracket rubbed on it. I don't know. But either way, now that the AC compressor's out of the way, we got plenty of room, so. As you can see, we got the lines in. That was super easy. All I had to do was disconnect the AC compressor, and I never would have thought about pulling the motor last night. Probably would have gotten a lot more done today, but whatever. I'm gonna leave them loose. I'm not gonna secure them right now because we're gonna put the transmission in tonight, at least that's my hope. So if we can get the transmission in, then we can bolt the hard lines up, and then that'll give me a reference, and we can secure it then once the lines are where they want to be. So that's my current game plan for that. Now it's time to finally install these up pipes, so let's do it. Up pipes are in, looking super good. Made sure they lined up really centered around the manifolds. They do have some flex in them, so you gotta make sure they sit good. They fit real nice up here. And then on the spot with the broken bolt, we just through bolted it with a flange nut. This came out of the extra bolt kit that I got for this manifold. It was a perfect length. And since these flange nuts had some teeth on them, it just sunk in there, and I didn't even have to hold it with a wrench. It just bit into the turbo, and now it's kind of part of the turbo. So that turned out super good. Just wiping down brake clean, get all the grease off of them so they don't be all super smoky. Now we are ready to put this flywheel back in and crank her down. All right, we are ready to get the new transmission in here. We got everything set up underneath. We just got to get this thing in position. Man, this transmission put up a major fight. This is my first time installing an automatic transmission, and I thought it was gonna be easier than a manual, but it wasn't at all. Turns out we didn't have the torque converter set in all the way. We went and confirmed that on the old transmission. Once we figured that out, I had Destin on the front of the motor, turning the crank back and forth to try and get it to set into place, and... oh, there it went! No fucking shot. Yep. No. Fucking send that bolt home. Oh, thank God we did it. Oh, I'm so glad we did not throw in the towel on that. We did it. Hell yes. That was the biggest pain in the ass I've ever done. All right, let's get this cross member in and call it a night. Alrighty guys, it's been quite a bit since I picked up the camera. I thought I was recording underneath there still, but I wasn't. Got the transfer case in. I kind of just manhandled that and put it in myself. Really bummed I didn't record that because I was really proud of myself. Yeah, I usually have Dilly do that for me, but Dilly's not here. And I wanted to show Dilly that I did it by myself. But, oh, I got the cross member up, so the transmission is now held up by itself. And I cleaned the shit out of the floor in the shop and everything else. New transmission looks nice and clean in there. I threw the old transfer case in. Yep, cross members back installed again. Holding everything up. Yeah, looking good. We still have to hook up the transmission harness. We still have to hook up the transmission cooler lines and the dipstick. And then we gotta throw the downpipe in still. I need bolts for that. And we still gotta get the exhaust back pressure sensor installed. I need to buy a new sensor, and I need to figure out what to do with this tube here, because I think it needs to get bent now that the sensor port is in a different position on these new up pipes. So, oh yeah, and we completely missed putting the torque converter nuts back into the flex plate. We haven't done that yet, and Destin dipped a while ago. He's got work in the morning, so I don't blame him for dipping. We just totally spaced doing it. So I'm gonna need someone to come help me do that, but that's one other thing we gotta do tomorrow. So we'll be back at this a little bit tomorrow. So with that being said, let's jump to tomorrow.
72 hours later.
All right, we are back in the shop. It's a beautiful Monday evening. Dilly's on his way to help me get these flex plate bolts in. We got the garage door open because it's currently warmer outside than it is in the shop. We're gonna try and button up this transmission. So I'm going to put one of the flex plate nuts in while I'm waiting for Dilly, and then get the harness started around the transmission. And then I think that's the majority of what I gotta do. I need to drain the transmission too. I guess I might as well do that. So yeah, let's start there. Alrighty guys, some really unfortunate discoveries have happened. We got Dilly here. He was gonna help me put the flex plate nuts in. And when I went to Google the torque spec for the flex plate nuts, it gave me the same torque spec that I did the flex plate to the crank bolts to, which was 35 foot-pounds, which I didn't think was enough. And so when I saw that same torque spec, I went, oh shit, I didn't torque the flex plate enough to the crank. And sure enough, I had to look into it more and found out I was not even close. It's like triple the amount that I originally torqued them to. So I gotta pull the trans back and crank that shit back up again. I'm not gonna film any of it because you guys watch me put it in. You don't need to watch me take it back out. So we're gonna call it here. Next time you guys see us, hopefully the trans is back in and we have the harness and the flex plate and bolts all in, and everything's just good, and maybe we can just like set the cab down and work on the front of the engine. That would be the goal. But I gotta do a little bunch of stuff this week in order to make that happen. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see y'all next week. Peace.